2018 midterm elections saw a record number of young people showing up at the ballot box. According to the United States Census Bureau, the number of voters between the ages of 18 and 29 was 16% higher than in 2014.
The results of 2018, of course, have Democrats focusing on young voters once again. According to Rock the Vote's executive director, Carolyn DeWitt, on Election Day 2020, 40% of the electorate will be Millennial or Gen Z. She joins us now to discuss the impact this generation of voters will have on the upcoming election. Carolyn, welcome back. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us about, always the thought is old people vote more than young people. Is this generation changing the game in any regard in that dynamic?
I think they are. I mean, one of the things that we always talk about is young voters are new voters. So they're completely unfamiliar with the process, which is the reason that we see the discrepancy between older generations turnout and youth turnout. But this generation, as we saw in 2018, and just their activism and their engagement overall has been incredible. 2018, we saw the record numbers, but there's even more interesting data if you look at states like Nevada, where 18 and 19-year-olds actually turned out in higher rates than even older young voters.
Wow,
oh, really?
That's a big deal.
Yeah,
So
it's incredible.
That's fascinating.
what are you expecting to see in 2020, and what indicators do we have that it could be a historic young voter election turnout?
Sure. So in the election we saw last week, we saw increased youth turnout. We also are seeing engagement across all of social media, email. We're seeing them increasing their donations to candidates. We're just seeing them pay attention more and more. Between federal election years, we have almost 9 million young people who turn 18 and become eligible voters. So one of the things that we've been really focused on is making sure that we're not just engaging those who voted in 16 and in 18, but engaging those new voters as well.
Wow.
And so are there some indications then that Gen Z may actually be more politically engaged than millennials?
There certainly are. That's kind of the trend that we're seeing, is that they are more engaged, they're passionate on the issues. It's just a matter of getting them the information that they need to participate in the process for the first time.
What issues are you seeing that are motivating people in particular?
I mean, over the last few years, we've seen, Black Lives Matter movement. We've seen native land and issues. Last year, we obviously saw gun violence. This year, we're seeing an increase in climate change and global warming as well. But the fascinating thing about young people is they're so smart on these issues. I mean, with the internet, they have access to so much information, and so they don't see these as siloed issues. They really see them as interconnected.
Yeah. Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've been curious about is certainly with millennials, we see that they tend to be progressive on most issues, but they are less likely to identify with either party. I mean, do we see that trend continuing with younger voters as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do see last year in the 2018, for instance, we did see one of the largest splits among the vote. We saw over a 2-to-1 for Democratic House candidates versus Republican, but they're not ascribing to the parties necessarily. What they're doing is they're looking at the candidates very, very critically, and they're saying who is going to help people and who's going to address these issues that are challenging our country.
So what do you see also within the breakdown versus the older voters? Because one of the most interesting we see is that particularly in the Democratic race, which we spend a lot of time talking about, is that younger voters are overwhelmingly backing candidates like Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, and Bernie Sanders. Older voters are much more backing people like Joe Biden, and then Elizabeth Warren kind of falls within the middle. Why do you think that is? What is it about these particular candidates that is speaking to so much more how these younger voters are thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to how this generation is operating. They're questioning everything. They're looking for new designs for things and new answers for the challenges we face, and they're not okay with sort of skirting the issues. They're not okay with moderation. They see these as very critical issues that need to be addressed with very bold plans.
Yeah.
What other indicators did you see out of the elections last week in Virginia, Kentucky, Mississippi, New Jersey? I think those were the 4 states that went.
Yeah, I mean, and we have Louisiana coming up as well.
Yeah.
Well, we saw increase in sort of the overall trends. We're seeing increase in youth turnout in general. We're seeing an increase in attractiveness of diverse candidates. We're seeing an increase, continued seeing that split among Democrat and Republican candidates as well.
And so how is voter registration looking in terms of a lot of these younger voters? Have we seen, so you said, 9 9 million people are now in between the election new eligible voters. How many of them are actually registering to vote?
That's right. We are seeing, Circle actually came out with some great data on this as well, out of Tufts University. We are seeing young voters voter registration increase, and then of course we've had several states that have passed amazing democratic reforms for automatic voter registration, and just the attention that the 2020 election is getting. We're seeing young people get ready for it.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. Great to see you.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Thank you.
We'll have more Rising after this.